A living Constitution. 2 years after the Constitutional Convention, Benjamin Franklin wrote, "Our Constitution is in actual operation. Everything appears to promise that it will last, but in this world nothing is certain but death and taxes." Despite Franklin's uncertainty about the Constitution's future, it is still very much alive today. The Constitution has survived because the framers wrote a document that the nation could alter and adapt to meet changing needs. The result is a flexible document that can be interpreted in different ways in keeping with the conditions of a particular time. The Constitution's flexibility allows the government to deal with matters the framers never anticipated, such as regulating nuclear power plants or developing a space program. In addition, the Constitution contains a provision for amending, changing, or adding to the document. Amending the Constitution. The framers intentionally made the amendment process difficult to discourage minor or frequent changes. Although thousands of amendments, changes to the Constitution, have been proposed since 1788, only 27 of them have actually become part of the Constitution. An amendment can be proposed in two ways: by the vote of 2/3 of both houses of Congress, or by 2/3 of the state legislatures asking for a special convention on the amendment. The second method has never been used. Ratification of an amendment requires approval by 3/4 of the states. States ratify amendments by the approval of state legislatures or by special state conventions. Only the 21st Amendment, which repealed the 18th Amendment banning the sale of alcoholic beverages, was ratified by state conventions. Voters in each state chose the delegates to the special conventions. Interpreting the Constitution. The Constitution includes two provisions that give Congress the power to act as needed to meet changing conditions. The first of these provisions is what is known as the Elastic Clause, Article 1, Section 8. It directs Congress to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for executing all the powers of government. Congress has interpreted this clause to mean that it has certain implied powers, powers not specifically defined in the Constitution. Over the years, Congress has drawn on its implied powers to pass laws to deal with the needs of society. The second provision used to expand congressional authority, the Commerce Clause, Article 1, Section 8, gives Congress the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states. Congress has used this clause to expand its powers into a number of areas, such as regulation of the airline industry, radio and television, and nuclear energy. The process of amending the Constitution and applying its principles in new areas helps keep our government functioning well. In 1974, Barbara Jordan, an African-American member of Congress and a constitutional scholar, spoke about her faith in the constitutional process. Primary source, quote, "Through the process of amendment, interpretation, and court decision, I have finally been included in, quote, we the people," close quote. "By faith in the Constitution is whole, it is complete, it is total." From her speech before the House, July 25, 1974. Reading check, explaining, what are reserved powers? The federal government. Main idea. The U.S. federal government has three branches: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. History and you. Have you ever written to a representative, senator, president, or chief justice? Read to learn about the duties of officials in the different branches of the federal government. The Constitution explains how our federal or national government is set up and how it works. The federal government is divided among the three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. The legislative branch. Congress. The legislative branch makes laws, imposes taxes, and declares war. It has two parts: the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives has 435 voting members and 5 non-voting delegates from the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, and the Virgin Islands. The number of representatives from each state is determined by the state's population. Representatives, who must be at least 25 years old, serve 2-year terms. The Senate has 100 senators, 2 from each state. Senators who must be at least 30 years old serve 6-year terms 1/3 of the Senate seats come up for election every 2 years. The rule of Congress. Congress makes the nation's laws and controls government spending. All tax and spending bills begin in the House of Representatives and are approved in both the House and the Senate before the President signs them into law. Congress also keeps a check on the actions of the executive branch. The House can impeach or bring charges against any federal official suspected of wrongdoing. Officials found guilty may be removed from office. The Senate also holds certain special powers. It can ratify treaties and approve the presidential appointments of federal officials. The executive branch. The executive branch carries out the laws passed by Congress. It includes the president, the vice president, and various offices, departments, and agencies. The president. The president carries out the nation's laws with the help of many executive offices, departments, and agencies. As head of the executive branch, the president has the following roles, each with specific powers and duties. Chief diplomat. Directs foreign policy, appoints ambassadors, and negotiates treaties with other nations. Commander-in-Chief. Uses the military in crises at home and abroad with congressional approval or declaration of war. Head of State. Representative of all Americans, receives foreign dignitaries, bestows honors on Americans. Legislative Leader. Proposes laws to Congress, sets goals for legislation, and working to see that they are passed. In the annual State of the Union address, the President presents goals for legislation. The Vice President also serves in the legislative branch as the President of the Senate. Cabinet and Vice President. The secretaries or heads of departments form the Cabinet, a group that helps the President set government policy. Members of the Cabinet advise the President on issues related to their departments. The Constitution gives the Vice President no duties aside from presiding over the Senate. It is the President who determines what the Vice President will do, such as working with Congress or making trips abroad. The judicial branch. The Constitution calls for a Supreme Court and the creation of lower courts as Congress wishes. In 1789, Congress passed a Judiciary Act which added a series of district courts to the federal court system. Appeals or circuit courts were added in 1891 to ease the workload of the Supreme Court. Lower federal courts. The duties of the lower federal courts are the following. District courts. Handle civil and criminal cases that come under federal authority. 91 district courts with at least one in every state. Appeals courts. Reviews district court decisions, overturn a verdict of the district court or under a retrial. 14 appeals courts in the United States. The Supreme Court. The Supreme Court stands at the top of the American legal system. It is one of the co-equal branches of the national government, along with Congress and the President. The Supreme Court is comprised of 9 justices, the Chief Justice of the United States and 8 associate justices. Congress has the power to set this number and the power to change it. The Constitution does not describe the duties of the justices, which have developed from laws and customs in response to national needs. The main duty of the justices is to hear and rule on cases. This duty involves them in 3 tasks: deciding which cases to hear from among thousands of appeals each year, deciding the case itself, and explaining the decision, called the court's opinion. The role of the judicial branch has grown as the powers implied in the Constitution have been put into practice. In the 1803 case Marbury versus Madison, Chief Justice John Marshall expanded Supreme Court powers by striking down an act of Congress. In that decision, the court defined its right to determine whether a law violates the Constitution. Although not mentioned in the Constitution, this principle, known as judicial review, has become a major power of the judicial branch. Reading check. Describing. What is Congress's role in government spending? Rights and citizen participation. Main idea. U.S. citizenship brings with it certain rights and responsibilities. History and you. Are you a good citizen? What are the rights and responsibilities of citizenship? Read to learn why American citizens have a responsibility to their community, the environment, and the law. All American citizens have certain basic rights, but they also have specific responsibilities. Living in a democracy means that every citizen is partly responsible for how society is governed and for the actions the government takes on each citizen's behalf. The rights of American citizens. The rights of Americans fall into three broad categories: the right to be protected from unfair government actions, to have equal treatment under the law, and to enjoy basic freedoms. Due process. The Fifth Amendment states that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Due process of law means that the government must follow procedures established by law and guaranteed by the Constitution, treating all people according to these principles. Equal protection. All Americans, regardless of race, religion, or political beliefs, have the right to be treated the same under the law. The 14th Amendment requires every state to grant its citizens equal protection to the laws. Basic freedoms. The basic freedoms involve the liberties outlined in the First Amendment: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and the right to petition. In a democratic society, powers exist in the hands of the people. Therefore, its citizens must be able to exchange ideas freely. Limits on rights. Our rights are not unlimited. The government can establish laws or rules to protect the health, safety, security, and moral standards of a community. Moreover, rights may be limited to prevent one person's rights from interfering with the rights of others. The restrictions of rights, however, must be reasonable and must apply to everyone equally. Citizen participation. A citizen is a person who owes loyalty to and is entitled to the protection of a state or nation. How do you become an American citizen? Generally, citizenship is granted to anyone born within the borders of the United States. Citizenship is also granted to anyone born outside of the United States if one parent is a U.S. citizen. A person of foreign birth can become a citizen through the process of naturalization. Before being admitted, citizenship applicants must be willing to give up any foreign allegiance and must promise to obey the Constitution and the laws of the United States. As citizens of the United States, we are expected to carry out certain duties and responsibilities. Duties are things we are required to do by law. Responsibilities are things we should do. Fulfilling both our duties and our responsibilities helps ensure that we have a good government and that we continue to enjoy our rights. Duties. One of the duties of all Americans is to obey the law. Laws help keep order, protect the health, safety, and property of citizens, and make it possible for people to live together peacefully. If you believe a law needs to be changed, you can work through your elected representatives to improve it. Americans also have a duty to pay taxes. The government uses tax money for purposes such as defending the nation, providing health insurance for senior citizens, and building roads and bridges. Another duty of citizens is to defend the nation. All males aged 18 and older must register with the government in case they are needed for military service. The Constitution guarantees all Americans the right to a trial by jury of their peers or equals. For this reason, citizens are often called to serve on juries after they become eligible at the age of 18. Having jurors on hand is necessary to guarantee the right to a fair and speedy trial. Responsibilities. Responsibilities are not as clear-cut as duties. Because responsibilities are voluntary, people are not arrested or punished if they do not fulfill these obligations. The quality of our lives diminishes if responsibilities are neglected. Perhaps your most important responsibility as a citizen will be to vote when you reach the age of 18. Voting allows you to participate in government and guide its direction. When you vote for people in government, you will be exercising your right of self-government. If you disapprove of the job your representatives are doing, you can express your views to them or help elect other people in the next election. Reading check. Summarizing. What is the difference between a duty and responsibility? Vocabulary, number one, and you'll have to define these guys. Preamble, popular sovereignty, republicanism, federalism, enumerated powers, reserved powers, concurrent powers, amend, implied powers, involve, diminish. 2, making connections. How are popular sovereignty and voting connected? 3, explaining. Are the rights of American citizens unlimited? Explain. 4, evaluating. What is the importance of federalism in the Constitution? 5, recreate the chart below and describe how each branch of government has power over another branch. And your essential question, why is citizen participation essential to the preservation of the U.S. political system?